Good morning. Before we proceed, we're going to introduce ourselves. We're the Primera group. Lesson 7, Trade in Goods and the WTO's agreements. What is tariff?
Tariff is a tax imposed by the government of a country or by supranational union on imports or exports of goods. Besides being a source of revenue for the government, import duties can also be a form of regulation of foreign trade and policy that taxes foreign products to encourage or safeguard domestic industry. This agreement shows a strong preference for tariffs over other instruments of protection. Tariffs may be levied on per unit basis or an ad valorem according to the value. Tariff concessions that countries give or receive upon accession to the WTO or as a part of negotiation are recorded as pound tariffs in their tariff schedule. Under the WTO, tariff means duty levied at border gates on goods going from one customs territory to another. It mainly means the import tariff. However, export tariffs are also applied by some WTO members. But the main interest of the GATT or WTO has been historically on import tariffs.
What is WTO agreement?
World Trade Organization agreements create an international trade legal framework for 164 economies around the world. These agreements cover goods, services, intellectual property, standards, investment, and other issues that impact the flow of trade. These agreements aims to establish rules and promote fair, open, and predictable global trade.
What is WTO trade rules?
WTO's trade rules, national treatment, it is for foreign and domestic goods and service should be treated equally. Tariff bindings to provide stability in international trade. Trade without discrimination, dispute settlement, it is designed to promote open and fair trade among nations. Most favored nations, members must treat each other equally, offering the same trade concession to all WTO members, unless in custom unions or free trade area. Dispute settlement, WTOs provide a mechanism for resolving trade disputes between members countries.
What is tariff as binding?
Tariff binding means that a country has committed to maintain its customs, duties, and important at or below a specified level. It promotes fair and transparent practice among nations. This commitment is part of the country's agreement within the framework of the World Trade Organization. The purpose of binding tariffs is to provide predictability and stability in international trade by ensuring that a country does not arbitrarily increase tariffs beyond the agreement upon rate.
What is tariff as subject to reduction?
According to WTO, developed countries' tariff reductions were for the most part being phased on 5 years from January 1, 1995. Tariffs on industrial products that receive duty-free treatment in developed countries will jump from 20% to 44%, and the result will be 40% reduction. There will be also fewer production changes at the high rates of duty. The proportion of import into developed countries from all sources facing tariffs rates of more than 15% will decline from 7% to 5%.
Lesson 8. Technical barriers to trade. What is TBT?
Or technical barriers to trade is an agreement which strongly encourages members to base their measures on international standard as a means to facilitate trade. It aims to ensure that the technical regulations, standards, and conformity assessment procedures are non-discriminatory and do not create unnecessary obstacle to trade. Through its transparency provisions, it also aims to create a predictable trading environment, and at the same time, it recognizes WTO members' right to implement measures to achieve legitimate policy objectives.
What is TBT agreements?
One of the objectives of agreements in technical barriers to trade (TBT) of the World Trade Organization is to ensure that technical regulation, product standard, and conformity assessment procedures, testing and certification procedures do not create unnecessary obstacle to trade. The TBT agreement recognizes the important contribution that intentionally standards and conformity assessment system is able to make by improving the efficiency of production and facilitating the conduct of international trade. However, the TBT agreement wishes to ensure that technical regulation and standard, including packaging, making, and labeling requirements and procedures for assessment of conformity with technical regulation and standard, do not create unnecessary obstacle to international trade. The TBT agreement recognizes that any country has the right to make measures necessary to ensure the quality of its export.
What are the 3 kinds of TBT?
What are the 3 kinds of TBT? First is technical regulation. Technical regulation document that lays down product characteristic or related process on production method, including the applicable administrative provision with which compliance is mandatory. The second is standard. Standard document approved by recognized body that provides for common and repeated use rules, guidelines, or characteristics for product or relative process and production method, with which compliance is not mandatory. And the last one is conformity assessment procedure. Conformity assessment procedure used directly or indirectly to determine that relevant requirement in technical regulation or standard are fulfilled.
What is the technological barrier?
Technological barriers are described as limited access to useful, relevant, and appropriate hardware and software, especially in instances where the use of the technology is perceived as not being sufficient to perform the task or accomplish the objective for which technology has initially utilized.
Technological barriers refers to the obstruction encountered during the process of communication due to limitation or difficulties associated with the use of technology, resulting in reduced clarity, accuracy, or efficiency of the message. In addition, technological barrier occur when technology or the way it is used cannot be accessed by people with disabilities.
What are the objectives of WTO?
The objectives of WTO are to improve standard of living of people in member countries, to increase the trade of service, and to enlarge production and trade of goods, to ensure optimum utilization of resources, to protect the concept of sustainable development, and to ensure full employment and increase in effective demand. The overall objective of WTO is to help its members use trade as a means to raise living standards, create jobs, and improve people's lives. The WTO operates the global system of trade rules and helps developing economies build their trade capacity. Global rules of trade provide assurance and stability.
That's all, thank you.